I'm here to talk to you guys about interpretation and creation, the relationship between the communication in art, and engaging archetypal art specifically for education. So art and critical thinking skills. One of the things that, at least here in America, we often downplay art. Art is often looked at as the reward for the real work. As mentioned, I have been teaching literacy for 20 years, but for the last couple years, I've been doing a lot of substituting. And being in other people's classrooms has really showed me how literacy and art are treated in our classrooms today. Literacy, a lot of the reading that students do, novels, are done independently, and they are given tests at the end, multiple choice tests showing comprehension. And then art is often videos, step-by-step videos, in which the students will draw something or paint something that will have a product which everybody will kind of have the same similar product at the end. So it's not really a uniqueness, it's not really creativity, it's about the product of making the lines and things like that. So when I was teaching in community college, teaching literacy, one of the things my students had the most difficulty with was critical thinking skills. They could understand what they read, they could repeat what they read, but they couldn't usually tell me what they thought about what they read. And I think part of what was lacking, especially with my students at the time, they'd been through what we had, No Child Left Behind. What was lacking for them was that critical thinking aspect. And that's where I put in archetypal arts, specifically archetypal literature and creating visual arts. So I just included some quotes here. But one of the things I would like to focus on, especially because most of my programs are aimed at young adults and adults, is that a lot of times they often believe that their problems, their experience and feelings are unique to themselves, making them feel less able to overcome challenges. Another problem I saw with a lot of my community college students is they would reach these challenges in school, and then they would feel like it was them that were lacking. Like they would have a difficult assignment to do. It was really too hard. Instead of saying, wow, this is really difficult, I should maybe go to the tutoring center and have somebody explain this to me so that I can understand it, they would say, wow, this is really difficult and I'm stupid. And oftentimes quit. So by giving students these archetypal stories of people overcoming challenges, especially not motivational stories, which are very transparent, but these stories where they have to implicitly incorporate them within themselves, it helps them, give them confidence and strength. Okay, so again, as a literacy person, one of the best things I've noticed is that we need to use the same vocabulary. Vocabulary is very important when we're talking about things. So when I'm talking about education, there is cognitive, affective, and psychomotor education. So cognitive education is what are the facts that we're trying to get our students to learn? What is the actual skill we're trying to impart? And that can also be done with explicit, direct teaching, but there's also the affective and the psychomotor aspect of learning. And as mentioned in my last slide, a lot of times teachers will focus on the cognitive. What are the skills? What are we trying to teach? And they tend to neglect the affective, which are the hidden benefits of the education. What are the socio-emotional things that they learn? What are the hidden benefits to the aspect? And so when you're giving direct instruction, a lot of times you miss the affective because you're not having the students process it through themselves. And that brings us to the last part, which is psychomotor, which is where they're creating. That's the more physical aspect of teaching and learning. It's where they actually show their learning. This would be where you're writing, creating something, showing the critical thought. It's the active part of learning. So another thing I'd like to go with our definitions would be archetypal. So archetypal are things that are going to be universal to us, and mythology specifically, I studied mythology at Pacifica as well as our other speaker, Pacifica, here. But it allows us to feel less alone while we still have our individuality and uniqueness. And I think that's really important because, one, yeah, you feel, especially young adults might be feeling alone, but you want to still be unique. You want to be included, but you still want to be an individual. So it's a double side. So mythology, art, ways of incorporating it within yourself, it's still your own uniqueness. You're the only one that got that meaning out of that piece. And somebody else gets the same meaning. Well, wow, we shared that aspect. So it's a unifying thing, and it's also a way of feeling special. Let's see. Then I also wanted to talk about the last thing I think I need to talk about in this slide is wabi-sabi art. And that's because, as mentioned, the kind of art that we've been doing with the students is messy. It's not about creating a specific product. It's about experiencing an art form. And a lot of times we will use art forms to experience a culture. So, for example, I know we mentioned in the last presentation was dream catchers. So we did one with dream catchers, and I actually had taught on the reservation for about 8 years. So I had a lot of experience. We had really, with the older kids, we had a really deep discussion, and I found a way to make dream catchers with paper plates. So it wasn't using hours on when normally it would take me 2 or 3 hours to make at least. But here the students and I were able to experience the art form. It wasn't about making a perfect dream catcher. It wasn't about that. It was about the idea of it, understanding that it was about dreams, and having the students think about their dreams and that kind of thing. So wabi-sabi art is what we do, and I tell the students that means it's not perfect, and it's not permanent, and it's not finished. So what that implies is it's not perfect. That's okay. We're not going for perfection. We're not trying to do this process forever. If you're trying to make this perfect painting, then you're not in the right class. And then if you're trying to make something permanent, a lot of these things aren't. We make things out of sand. We make things out of, paper plates. That's not going to last forever. And then the last thing is that it's not finished. I've had artwork that I carried around with me. There's one piece for 8 years, and then I decided after 8 years to repaint the surface and add a butterfly and some different things, and I love it now. But for 8 years it was unfinished. So art doesn't have to be finished either, and all those things are true, and they're okay, and they're not only okay, but they're beautiful. So that's kind of where we talk about with the students in wabi-sabi art. Just a little bit about who I am and what we've been doing, the journey through education and art. So I have been a professional educator for 20 years. When I started, it was on the Saboba Indian Reservation here in California. So it's a little after 6 o'clock here. And we started, it was the first club on campus, was the Creative Natives. And there was just a lot of students who wanted to have a place to hang out and express themselves. And so we started working with poetry and art, and just after school once a week would get together and do different things. And we started building a nice little community, and the kids published, I think we did about 4 or 5 books while I was there, little magazines, and that was a lot of fun. And then after that I started teaching adults and became a mythologist, and I realized that's where my community college students were really lacking that critical thinking skills, so I decided to incorporate mythology. And sorry, Kevin, I did not track my time, so if I'm going over, please just kind of let me know. So I'm just going to kind of go through this. And then we started doing our mindful art. And what I wanted to talk about that was with literacy and art and mindful art is the way of, is engaging art in order to engage the cognitive that we're trying to reach. When I started, like I mentioned, I'm going through a difficult time while I was going through my doctoral process. It ended up taking me quite a few extra years, and I had to get extensions and things like that, but it was very difficult for me. And one of the ways I found peace was through art. And I'm not the artist that wants to do the perfect piece. I don't have the patience, I'll be honest, to make that beautiful ocean scene. But it brings me joy. And I found that teaching other people brought them joy too, as well as bring me joy. And so I started realizing that this was something that I could incorporate into my classroom. So when we teach the mythology, or we talk about, our personal narratives, incorporating those archetypal examples. One of the ones that, like, for example, right now we're using Medusa a lot. A lot of that's the younger here. We have Percy Jackson. I'm not sure about you guys, but Percy Jackson's very popular. And so we have Medusa with that. So, and with Medusa, I'm able to talk about the monsters and perspective. And, okay, good, about 5 minutes. So I'm able to talk about monsters, perspective, and it really relates to students. In fact, a couple of the pictures I think of in this slideshow do talk about, when our students were doing Medusa and making Medusa crowns. And I think it was a really powerful experience for some of the students, because some of them feel like misfits. Some of them feel maybe a little bit persecuted. So they were able to relate in that way because, especially like if minorities here in America, were a lot of times persecuted and treated improperly with the excuse of that they were the other. And I think when you look at Western civilization, there's a lot of otherness that was excused, horrible behaviors. And when we looked at Greek mythology through Medusa and her family, the Odysseus, which is something I'd teach in 9th grade, different things. When you look at those monsters, how are they treated? I mean, does the Minotaur know that he's going to be hunted and slayed? Do they know what's going on? So by having my students put themselves into the perspective of Medusa, using these archetypal literature and relating them and working them, engaging them in this way, and then also making something that's fun and making it creative, because like with Jung, I think about him playing with rocks, and I think about myself, and so many times when I just get so mentally stuck, but I play. And you think about so many times how much our students just want to play. They just want to have fun. They just want to create, and not do it in a way where, oh, it's so stressful, we need to make this product. It's more about, okay, how do we use the play to work our minds? Because one of the things I try not to do is give too much instruction. When I give instruction for for art, I give them the materials, give them the stories behind it, give them some ideas, but they run with it, and they always come up with stuff that's way more interesting or way more exciting than I think that I would have come up with myself. So so that's a little bit about the wabi-sabi art and incorporating literature and art into our classrooms. So I hope you enjoyed it. And I think I'm about done, even though I might have a minute or two left.
Right on time. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
It's such a joy to see another perspective on this. It was so beautiful. Yeah. And I think I'm going to have a lot of questions during discussion. Thank you, Tracy.
Thank you, Kevin.
Yeah. Okay, let's go to Claude. So this is my second time moderating for Claude, and it is a privilege as well.